Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with The Sun's political editor, Harry Cole, and the journalist and broadcaster, Jenny Kleeman. Welcome to both of you. So to the front pages, as ever, let us start with The Guardian. It leads with tonight's breaking news of another Houthi attack on a cargo ship, this time an American vessel in the Gulf of Aden. The Metro leads on the report into the Rochdale child sex abuse scandal with the headline, 96 Rochdale groomers are still free. The Telegraph has news that the deputy chairman of the Tory party, Lee Anderson, is to vote against the government's new Rwanda deportations bill. The Eye reports that 47 asylum seekers who were taken off the first of the government's cancelled flights to Rwanda are still in hotels here in the UK 18 months later. Rishi Sunak, meanwhile, tells The Express that he will defy any European judgments aimed at stopping the Rwanda flights in the future. That is also the top story in tomorrow's Daily Mail. PM, I will defy Euro judges. The Financial Times has a report from the National Audit Office which says the government could save £20 billion a year by using better IT, tackling fraud and getting a proper grip on big projects like HS2. The Sun has news that England and Manchester City footballer Kyle Walker, whose marriage is in trouble, is about to become a father again. And The Star says that people are eating more fatty foods during the cold snap. The headline, blubbery weather we're having. Well, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. So let's head to Harry and Jenny. Welcome to both of you. Rwanda, not surprising, I suppose, given the news that the deputy chair, men, both of them, are likely to rebel over parts of the amendments, I guess, of the Rwanda bill tomorrow. Yes, this is what happens when you sort of kick a problem down the road. It turns out it comes back, and the third week of January comes around even quicker than Rishi Sunak would have hoped when he sort of delayed this fight with the rebels to his sort of flagship Rwanda bill. This is a Prime Minister who, when he was Chancellor, was very sceptical of this idea that you could offshore asylum processing and even, in fact, actually just have migrants who land on Britain's shores sent to Central Africa as a solution. When he was running for Tory leader, he was openly discussed dropping the bill entirely and thinking, well, you know, clean start, new leader, maybe we should get rid of it. And it's now ended up making it his flagship problem. The problem is that people... Flagship policy, not problem. Well, big problem, flagship solution to it. But the question is whether it's going to work. And 60 of his colleagues, well, I reckon about half of them just hate Rishi Sunak and want to get rid of him. The other half are genuinely concerned that this is just not a solution to the problem. They think the Tories' credibility is going to be damaged even more if they were to pass a Duff bill. That said, Number 10 quite chipper tonight. I think they think they've got the numbers. The Rebels are a little bit more sort of downbeat, I would say. The crucial thing that's coming up in the next few days is you can rebel against the bill at second reading. You can amend, third committee stage. Yeah. There we go. Had second reading, now committee stage. You can amend it. It's whether you then, if you don't get your amendments through to toughen up that bill, whether you then ultimately vote again at third reading, which could come as soon as Wednesday night. And that's the killer vote for Sunak. If he loses that, then his credibility really is shot. I suspect we'll see some dramatic voting against the amendments like Lee Anderson says he is going to do tonight, the Deputy Chairman. But actually, when push comes to shove, it's an election year. Will they just, you know, hold their noses and say, well, we don't think it's going to work, but it's better than having no bill at all? Yes, exactly. And we had the sort of the elections guru for the Tory party, yes, to the 1922, saying divided parties don't win. Yes. And here we are, yet again, the Tories tearing themselves apart over another policy. Yes, and demonstrating to the country that the Conservative Party is, as it's always been, a coalition of many different factions who are united by perhaps a desire for lower taxes. But you have the One Nation Tories who have kind of kept in line for quite a long time, who are not going to work any kind of toughening up of this legislation. You have Rwanda itself, who have said that they will withdraw from participating if international law is broken. So he is in a difficult position. And it is interesting, you know, as Harry says, he wasn't massively into the idea of Rwanda as it was. He has a cabinet which has many very senior members, including the Home Secretary, who himself has you know, said that he doesn't necessarily think it's a great idea, shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. And yet it is the hill on which he has chosen to die, and potentially very
very embarrassing for him. But, you know, I was here the night before the second reading, which should have been a complete formality, and there were these debates around then. Yes, this is just kicking it into the long grass. And, yes, what's the Lords going to do with it? Even if it does go further, it's going to be modified by the Lords. So this is a problem that is going to continue and continue.
Yeah, and the amendments, just to sort of summarise it generally, are to kind of limit the appeals process, you know, which would eventually stop people being sent, right?
Limit the appeals process, then also what the key ask from the sort of legally minded rebels is that they don't trust Rishi Sunak, essentially. When he says, and I think it's on the front of the Express, and it's on the front of the Mail, I will ignore Strasbourg. If they try to ground the planes again, as they did, I think 18 months ago, roughly, it was, you know, if they do these so-called Rule 39 orders, which basically is an emergency injunction from the Strasbourg court that says, we think this could break international law, so why don't we just delay everything and while we have our investigation. Sunak has said today, in a sort of slightly, it looked like a very coded message today. Well, not that coded, but the way he did it
doesn't read very coded.
No, well, it kind of is, though, is the problem. Because if you actually drill down to it, I mean, Downing Street were delighted with that front page, but actually what he said was he would be prepared to, in some cases, if it was appropriate, which isn't I will, it's I will consider.
Yeah.
And so they want it written into the sort of legislation, which is red rag to a bull for the One Nation, as Jenny made the point. It's debatable whether the Rwandans would be comfortable with it. They want to sort of write into the law that we will automatically ignore Strasbourg. Now, look, Number 10 is saying, well, that's actually impossible. The Attorney General is saying that's impossible because sometimes, you know, there will be cases where we do have to listen to them, but it can be done on a case-by-case basis. And so it's all coming down really to trust. And that's not a healthy place for a Prime Minister to be, because what the rebels are basically saying is, we don't believe you. And if the Tory MPs don't believe the Prime Minister, then why should anyone else?
And if you have the two, you know, deputy chairs potentially joining this revolt, then that puts Sunak in a very difficult position because he has to decide, does he keep them on side and look weak? Does he get rid of them? Where would that put him? It's incredible. You know, you say people don't vote for divided parties. They also don't vote for weak leaders either.
Yeah. So Mrs. Lee Anderson, who's got a bit of a profile now, hasn't it?
But, I mean,
and the other person, Brendan Clark-Smith, who's going to put their name to and vote for.
Yeah, but the problem is, again, this is a problem of Number 10's own making because they desperately tried to create as many made-up jobs in government, like deputy chairman of the Conservative
Party. So these are made-up jobs. They don't really need them.
I think they get paid out of party funds if they get paid at all. They're not government roles. They're not positions within government. They're not ministers. But once again, they're, you know, as Rishi Sunak was trying to settle down sort of a rebellious party, he tried to hand out as many jobs as possible. So be that sort of junior bag carriers, PPSs. I think there are 10 or 11 deputy chairmen of the Conservative Party. So obviously some of them...
Anti-woke minister.
Yeah, well, the Minister for Common Sense, please. Coined by the Sun, that job title, I'll have you know. So almost a hostage to fortune because he's created these people out of nowhere. Brendan Clark-Smith was a minister, and the short-lived minister in the Boris regime. Lee Anderson was being hired into the Tory party to be the person that goes too far. That, you know, he makes Rishi look like a man of the people by having Lee from Ashfield on his side, and lo and behold, you know, he's been bitten by literally biting the hand that fed them.
It's a broad church, remember? That's
it
the
is
point,
a broad
isn't
church,
it? Yeah, we remember
but
that.
an increasingly...
Yeah, but people say we don't have certain parties that Europe has because we have broad churches.
Labour's a broad church as well, as we're seeing at the same time.
The FT just quickly as well, Sunak confronts the Tory rebels as Red Wall Party deputy joins Rwanda revolt. That's presumably...
Exactly, that's Lee
Anderson,
and Brendan Clark-Smith, who's not a left-winger, put it that way.
OK, so lots of coverage on that on the next few days. The Eye, just quickly as well, migrants taken off the first Rwanda flight, still in asylum hotels 18 months later. So this sort of stasis we're in.
Yes, and also reminding us that a large part of the problem that we have with migration is to do with the backlog, is to do with the paralysis and Grant Shapps being unable to explain why the UK has accepted asylum seekers from Rwanda today. So just highlighting the enormous mess of this policy that Rishi Sunak has chosen to be the centre of his leadership, really.
Yeah, well, I think most people would see that and just think this is nuts. This is totally nuts. You know, are we?
Which bit of it? Sorry.
The fact that we are completely incapable of running our own country and having any real say on who comes into this country, who has the right to come to this country and who doesn't.
But also,
I think voters will look at that and just think this is bonkers.
I think voters might look at that also and think, why are we so fixated on Rwanda still? Why are we wasting all this time and
because
energy
nothing
and
else
political
has
capital
worked, I
on
think,
Rwanda?
is the thing. It remarkably, you know, for how much vitriol there is about this policy, even within the Conservative Party, within Westminster, poll after poll consistently shows it has more public supporting it.
Does it really, though?
Yeah,
I mean, I was seeing some polls today showing that, you know, a very large proportion of the population don't really think that Rwanda is the answer. And
a lot of people think it doesn't work, but they will, you know, I think it's not for want of trying for other countries. I think it is, it really is, it is becoming totemic of the complete impotence of government generally, this British state generally.
I know we're going to talk about
anything.
Iowa and the caucuses and the first test for the Republican candidates tonight in a minute. But I just read on an AP poll that voters, people arriving there for their caucuses, suggest that immigration is bigger than the economy for them. So we'll just leave that there. We'll come to that in a minute. Anyway, let's talk Houthi rebels, Yemen. It's another febrile night if you look at the news wires. The Guardian suggesting defiant Houthis attack a cargo ship. The conflict widens in the Middle East. Rishi Sunak came to explain the UK's action to the House of Commons.
Yes, and he said today that it was limited and not escalating, and yet then there was this attack immediately afterwards, which would suggest that, you know, it hasn't warned the Houthis off. And you know, these were targeted attacks. Rishi Sunak was at pains to point out that this was not to do with Israel-Gaza. This was because a Royal Navy ship on the 9th of January had been targeted. We are protecting our own interests.
Self-defence.
Self-defence. But the question is what happens next? Because this has not eroded their capacity, the Houthis' capacity to launch these attacks. It hasn't frightened them from doing it. The Houthis are getting a lot of political capital in the two-thirds of Yemen where they are in charge by saying that they are demanding an Israeli ceasefire in Gaza, and this is the way they're getting attention for it. They're not stopping. So what do we do? This does seem to be escalating, or at least it doesn't seem to be stopping. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, and, well, I was just going to move on to the Sun, actually. Defence Secretary's stark warning, shouts World War III in 5 years, you know, a pre-war phase. We've obviously had this Iranian attack on Erbil in northern Iraq tonight. They say they've hit the espionage headquarters of Israel's Mossad in Iraq's Kurdistan. The US says no US targets have been hit. North Korea has come out as well and suggested it's pulling out of all unification programmes with South Korea and doesn't shy from war, and so it goes on.
I think what the point Grant Shapps made, and he made in very stark terms today, not least because there's a budget coming up and he wants to increase in defence spending, like all defence secretaries do. It's always remarkable. They get in there, they look under the bonnet and go, we're going to need a lot more money, which is a very valid point. I think, just going back to what Jenny said, I think the way the Houthis have reacted to this and the way that they're being able to carry on almost thumbing their nose at this, you know, pretty substantial strike by the US and the UK says a lot about the state of modern warfare in the fact that they are knocking these drones out, the Iranian designed and funded drones, at an absolute fraction of the cost of the missiles it's taking and the ships and the deployments it's taking to get rid of them. So we're in a situation where actually our adversaries have more access to smaller and cheaper and more dangerously effective weapons, and the reaction to them actually is very expensive and slower and sluggish. So I think some of the points Shapps was making today is actually we need to Ukraine has taught us on one front, you need to kind of get real about what we actually need. And in a modern warfare requires massive amounts of research and investigation and investment to work out how we're going to fight in an entirely different way than we would have thought we would.
The use of drones in Ukraine has changed everything, hasn't it?
And in Yemen.
And now, as we see here. Anyway, lots more still to come, including this in the Metro. 96 Rochdale groomers still free. That report to come, and also more on Donald Trump as well. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview, joined once again by the Sun's political editor, Harry Cole, and the journalist and broadcaster, Jenny Kleeman. Welcome back to both of you. Jenny, let's go to the Metro, shall we? Once again, a report on the Rochdale child grooming scandal, including the warning that the threat still exists.
Yes, there's going to be another report on the present-day situation, which is going to be published in the summer. But this looked back to between 2004 and 2012. And it was a long time coming, this report, and part of the reason for that is that many people refused to cooperate, ignored requests to speak, to the people compiling this report. It was hard to get hold of documents, and quite often these are police officers, these are people paid by the public purse. So it shows that even though we know, I mean, we've known since 2012 that there was this scandal, there is still a reluctance to reckon with it. Nobody has been held accountable for it, and this stark figure, 96 abusers, are still potentially still free. And then you have Maggie Oliver, who is, of course, an ex-detective who resigned over this scandal. She was saying today that she knows of 371 victims who say their allegations were not taken seriously. The details in this are horrific, like really horrific, of basically young women being treated like they're not fully human, not given the status of victim, not given the normal rights that you would afford
or presumed to be a prostitute.
Presumed to be a prostitute, even though you know there's no such thing as a child prostitute. You're just a victim of sexual abuse, and just I don't even know if I can read some of these details out on the TV. Some of it is so horrific of what happened to some of these girls. So, none of this is surprising, apart from maybe the fact that there are many people who apparently have got away with it.
I do want to get to Trump. Do you want to just...
I just think the really interesting point that Ms Oliver made today was, again, we're seeing in yet another example where whistleblowers were ignored, people were ignored, big organisations said, we know what's right, little people were tramped on, and once again it's taken years and years and years to come out.
Yeah, yet again, another one of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to the picture in the Daily Telegraph, which I have to say I love.
What a picture.
I've got the match, it's the matching colour, maybe that's why I love it. But anyway, so it's the Iowa caucuses, those poor people who are going out in the cold to have meetings,
-20,
to vote.
Yeah,
-20 without the wind chill factored in.
Well,
risking their lives because Trump says it's worth it.
But that is the question, it is basically complacency that could be Trump's problem. Would people be risking their lives knowing that he is basically a shoo-in to win? He's got 50% of the vote. If those people stay at home, choose the sofa over going to vote, then that could be... I mean, he's still going to win, though, isn't he? But it's a race for second place between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis.
He's back. Like, bizarrely, though, he's not a million miles in age away from Joe Biden. But you see Donald Trump, he was in that pizza restaurant, shaking staff, meeting firemen.
Although he looked a bit dishevelled when he arrived in Iowa on Saturday.
Lost a little weight,
just look at these
looking a little older, but,
He talked about the appalling weather and his very pristine hair was a little dishevelled or more dishevelled than normal.
Exactly.
But he's still very tanned, and that's what matters.
And remarkably, he looks a lot, worryingly, looks a lot more sprightly than Joe Biden.
He's got a few court cases ahead of him, obviously. Both of you, thank you both very much indeed. Harry and Jenny, thank you.